He barked, "Shut up," as my ribs cracked, and my sister laughed while I couldn't breathe. "Shut up," my dad barked as pain shot through my ribs. My sister laughed. Then the doctor walked in. The sound of his voice still echoes in my head. It wasn't just loud. It was sharp, like a knife. His hand had connected with my side a moment before, and I felt the dull crack, the air rushing out of my lungs. I bent forward, clutching myself, my chest screaming with pain. And then I heard her. My sister. Laughing. Not nervously, not awkwardly. She laughed like it was funny. Like watching me struggle to breathe was some kind of performance put on just for her entertainment. Tears stung my eyes. Not just from the pain, but from the humiliation. From the realization that this wasn't just about my dad's temper. It was about the way my entire family seemed to find joy in my suffering. The hospital room was cold, the walls too white, too sterile. The smell of disinfectant clung to everything. I had been sitting on the edge of the bed, waiting for the doctor to come back, when Dad's temper exploded again. He had been pacing, muttering about how I always made things worse, how I was weak. And I, stupidly, had tried to defend myself. "Dad, I didn't." That's when his hand slammed into me. That's when I felt the snap. I could barely get words out. My chest felt crushed. My breaths came in short, shallow gasps. And across the room, my sister leaned against the wall, her arms folded, smirking like I deserved it. Then the smirk broke into a laugh. Loud. Cruel. Piercing. I wanted to scream back. I wanted to ask her why. Why she always sided with him. Why she always treated me like I was the joke. But all I could do was press my arm against my side, trying to keep the world from spinning. Then, the door creaked open. The doctor stepped inside. His eyes swept across the scene instantly. Me bent over in agony, my dad still standing too close, my sister covering her mouth like she'd been caught enjoying something forbidden. The air shifted. For a second, no one spoke. The doctor's brows furrowed as he set the chart down. His gaze stayed on me. "What happened here?" His voice was calm, but it carried weight. Authority. My dad straightened. "He's exaggerating. Always does. Probably just fell or something." My sister chuckled under her breath, like it was the most obvious lie she'd ever heard. The doctor didn't smile. He walked toward me, steady and slow, his eyes never leaving my face. "Where exactly does it hurt?" I wanted to answer, but even speaking was hard. My voice came out strained, broken. "Ribs. Left side." The doctor's hands were clinical, but gentle as he pressed along my ribcage. I flinched at the touch, a hiss escaping through my teeth. His eyes narrowed. "That's not from a fall," he muttered, almost to himself. I froze. My father's jaw tightened. My sister's smirk slipped for the first time, her eyes darting to the floor. The doctor stood straight, pulling off his gloves. "We'll need scans. And we'll be having a conversation after." I couldn't read his tone, but it wasn't casual. It wasn't routine. He looked at my father, then at me, then back again, like he'd pieced together something neither of them wanted said out loud. And in that moment, through the blur of pain, I realized this wasn't just about broken ribs. But the doctor didn't just treat me. He uncovered a secret that made everything worse. The doctor's words wouldn't leave my head. "That's not from a fall." He had said it so firmly, so surely, like he could see straight through the lies my father had built around me my entire life. And as I sat there, trying to steady my breathing, flashes from my past came crashing back. It had always been this way. Always. My father's voice rising whenever I so much as asked a question. His fists pounding the table when my grades weren't as good as my sister's. His disgust when I cried. I remembered being 10 years old, standing in the kitchen with tears rolling down my cheeks because I had dropped a glass. It shattered, shards flying across the floor. My dad stormed in, red-faced. "What is wrong with you? Can't you do anything right?" he'd shouted. My sister had been there too. She was 2 years older, smug even back then. She'd smirked and said, Maybe you should just let me handle things, Dad. He's too clumsy. And Dad had smiled at her. He actually smiled at her while glaring at me like I was the dirt on his shoes. That memory burned. But there were so many others. Every time she achieved something, a good grade, a trophy, even just a compliment from someone at church, Dad would beam with pride. He'd tell everyone about his girl, how smart she was, how strong she was. And me, I could have been invisible. Unless I messed up. Then suddenly, I was the center of attention. The yelling, the insults, the punishments. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. I tried. God knows I tried. I studied harder. I played sports even though I hated them. I forced myself to laugh at jokes I didn't find funny just to fit in. None of it mattered. Nothing was ever enough. The hospital air smelled too much like bleach, but it couldn't scrub away the stink of years of being unwanted. My sister's laugh from earlier echoed in my mind. It wasn't new. She had laughed before. When I tripped in front of my classmates, she laughed. When Dad dragged me out of a party for embarrassing the family, she laughed. When Mom left, she laughed hardest, whispering that maybe it was my fault. That memory cut deepest of all. I had been 13 when she left. One night she was just gone. No goodbye, no hug, no explanation. Just a note that said she couldn't live like this anymore. I knew she meant Dad. I knew it. But still, part of me wondered if she had left because of me. Because I was too much trouble. Dad never spoke her name again. And my sister? She acted like Mom never existed. She slid comfortably into the role of favorite child, glowing under his approval. And me? I became the shadow. The punching bag. The scapegoat. The doctor's presence pulled me back to now. He was scribbling something on his chart, his face unreadable. My father stood stiff, his fists clenched at his sides. My sister picked at her nails, pretending not to care. But I cared. I cared so much it hurt. My ribs throbbed, but my chest ached more from everything I had swallowed down over the years. Every insult. Every dismissal. Every cruel laugh. This wasn't just about today's injury. It was about years of being broken down. About the slow, careful way they had chipped at me until I believed I was worthless. And yet, sitting there in that hospital bed, I realized something. This scene, Dad's bark, my sister's laughter, the doctor's suspicion, it wasn't new. It was just the final chapter in a story I'd been trapped in since childhood. The peak of a mountain built from their favoritism, their cruelty, their betrayals. I thought I had survived their cruelty before, but this time I was about to learn the ugliest truth. I thought I had survived their cruelty before, but this time I was about to learn the ugliest truth. The doctor left the room briefly to order the scans. My father followed him out, muttering something about overreactions and wasting everyone's time. My sister trailed behind, her phone in hand, thumbs moving like she was updating someone about the show she'd just witnessed. I stayed seated on the bed, pressing my hand against my ribs, fighting through every breath. The room was quiet, too quiet, and that's when I realized I could hear them outside. Their voices bled in through the thin hospital walls. The doctor's tone was low, firm. These injuries are not consistent with a fall. His ribs may be fractured, possibly more. And this isn't the first time, is it? My father's voice dropped to a growl. Don't you start. You don't know this boy. He's weak. Always has been. I froze. My stomach twisted. Weak. Always weak. The same words he had thrown at me my whole life. Then came my sister's voice, softer but sharp enough to cut through me. Doctor, maybe you should just focus on fixing him, not lecturing us. He exaggerates pain. He always has. I could almost see her rolling her eyes, dismissing me the way she always did. But the doctor didn't sound convinced. Exaggerating. His voice sharpened. Cracked ribs are not an exaggeration. This isn't something you can hide. Silence followed. Heavy silence. Then, my father sighed. Listen, Just patch him up. He'll be fine. Don't make this a bigger issue than it is." The doctor didn't answer immediately. I heard footsteps, then the faint squeak of a chair. He must have sat down. If I find what I think I will in those scans, I'm obligated to report this. Do you understand? Report this. My heart slammed against my chest, harder than the pain in my ribs. He knew. He knew what my father had done. But what gutted me most wasn't the doctor's suspicion. It was my sister's response. Her voice dropped, almost a whisper, but I heard it. "If you report it, you'll ruin us. Dad could lose everything." And honestly, she paused. I could imagine her glance toward the door, making sure I wasn't near. "He probably deserves it. But if you do this, it'll destroy the family." "And for what? Him. For what? Him." The words hit harder than Dad's hand ever had. I clenched my jaw, biting back a cry. She had said it so easily. Like I was just collateral. Like protecting Dad's reputation was more important than protecting me. I pressed my fist against my mouth, trying not to sob, but the tears still came hot and fast. My sister had always mocked me, but this was different. This was betrayal on a level I couldn't process. She was choosing him. Again. Even knowing what he'd done. Even hearing the doctor threaten to report it. The conversation outside faded as their footsteps carried them farther down the hall. I was left in silence, trembling, each shallow breath reminding me how broken I really was. Minutes passed. Maybe longer. I don't know. Eventually, the door opened again. The doctor returned, carrying forms and speaking softly, telling me we needed imaging right away. His words blurred. I nodded, but my focus was somewhere else. Because as he set the clipboard down, a stack of papers slipped free. They fluttered onto the chair beside my bed. He didn't notice. He was too busy adjusting the machines. When he left the room again, I reached for them, wincing with every move. My fingers closed around the edge of the papers, my heart hammering. At first, I thought they were just test forms. But then I saw names, dates, notes, and one page that didn't belong to the doctor at all. It had my father's handwriting on it. My sister's name was there too. My stomach dropped as I realized what I was holding. That's when I found the hidden papers, and everything I thought I knew about my family shattered. The papers trembled in my hands as I flipped through them, my pulse pounding harder than the ache in my ribs. At first, I couldn't make sense of what I was reading. Medical reports. Notes. But then the pieces started to come together, and each word was a dagger. One sheet listed injuries I didn't even remember. Bruises logged months ago, a sprained wrist noted last year. I stared at the doctor's neat handwriting. Patient claims he fell. Injuries inconsistent with fall. I felt sick. This wasn't the first time my pain had been doubted. Doctors had known. They had written it down. And somehow, my father had made it all disappear. Then I found another page. Not medical. Financial. My dad's signature was scrawled across the bottom. He had been moving money from my college fund into an account under my sister's name. The dates lined up perfectly with the year she started private lessons, the new clothes, the trips she bragged about. My throat closed. That money was supposed to be my chance. My escape. But it had been handed to her like a gift, while I was told we couldn't afford anything for me. I kept digging. There was more. Notes from the school counselor, letters from teachers concerned about possible neglect. Every warning had been intercepted, every concern brushed under the rug. And every single time, Dad had spun the same story. I was clumsy. I was dramatic. I was weak. And my sister? Her name appeared again and again, woven into the lies. She had backed him up. She had laughed at the right moments, confirmed his excuses, played the perfect daughter to cover his abuse. I felt the rage rise like fire in my chest. 4 years, I had believed their narrative. I had thought maybe I really was the problem. But here it was, proof. Black and white. They weren't just cruel. They were calculated. I pressed the papers against my chest, ignoring the sting in my ribs. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was about fighting back. For the first time, I imagined what it would feel like to expose them. To hold these pages in front of their faces and watch their lies unravel. To finally turn the spotlight onto their cruelty. I knew I couldn't explode with rage like Dad always did. I had to be smarter. I had to be colder. So I started small. I slipped the papers under my hospital blanket, tucking them close. I made sure my breathing looked steady when the nurse returned, when the doctor came back in. I kept my voice quiet, my eyes down, playing the same role they expected. But inside, I was planning. Every second, every heartbeat, I was building the moment in my mind. I wasn't going to be their scapegoat anymore. I wasn't going to let my sister smirk while Dad barked and hit and stole from me. I had proof now. And with proof, I had power. When the door opened again and they all stepped inside, my father stiff, my sister smug, the doctor unreadable, I knew it was time. I pulled the papers from under the blanket, my hands shaking but steady enough to hold them up. And when I finally confronted them with the truth, the room fell silent. The papers shook in my hands, but my voice was steadier than I expected. I know what you did. My father froze. His jaw clenched, but his eyes flickered, betraying the panic he tried to hide. My sister scoffed, tossing her hair like it was nothing. Oh, what now? Another drama. I held the page higher, my eyes locked on hers. You knew. About the money. About the lies. You stood there every time and laughed while he covered it up. And I have it all right here. Her smirk faltered, just a hairline crack, but I saw it. For the first time, she wasn't fully in control. My father's voice boomed, desperate. You don't understand what you're talking about. Those papers mean nothing. The doctor stepped forward. His voice was calm, but it cut sharper than any shout. They mean plenty. These records line up with my own examinations. The injuries. The patterns. And your explanations never matched. He turned his gaze on my father, unblinking. I can't ignore this anymore. It's going in the report. The silence that followed was deafening. My sister's eyes darted from the doctor to me, her face draining of color. My father sputtered, searching for words, but none came. For years, I had dreamed of this moment, where the truth stood taller than his rage, where her laughter couldn't drown out my pain. And now it was here. My ribs ached with every breath, but I straightened, taller than I had ever dared in front of them. You always told me to shut up. You made me believe I was weak, worthless. But you were the ones hiding. You were the ones lying. My father's fists tightened at his sides. His old threat. His old weapon. But it didn't scare me anymore. Not with the doctor here. Not with the proof in my hands. Not with the weight of truth finally on my side. You're done, I said quietly. Firmly. Both of you. My sister finally broke. You're going to ruin us, she hissed, her voice cracking. Do you know what people will say? I almost laughed. That was all she cared about. Reputation. Image. While I was choking on my own blood and pain, she was worried about whispers. The doctor placed a hand on my shoulder. You've been through enough. We'll make sure you're safe. Safe. A word I hadn't felt in years. My father tried once more. Think about what you're doing. Think about family. I met his gaze, steady. Family doesn't break you just to feel strong. Family doesn't laugh when you can't breathe. My voice caught, but I pushed the words out. You don't get to call yourself my family anymore. I laid the papers down on the bed. Not because I was giving them up, but because I didn't need to cling to them anymore. The truth was already alive in the room. It was undeniable. And as I swung my legs off the bed, pain tearing through my side, I felt lighter, stronger, freer. I didn't wait for an apology. I didn't need one. Their silence, their pale faces, their unraveling, that was enough. As I walked out of that room, the weight of years slid off my shoulders. My ribs might have been broken, but my spirit had never been straighter. They thought breaking my ribs would silence me. Instead, it gave me the spine to finally stand tall.